Don's Wife, Chapter 5, Part 4. Since Sate's son had married on his own in the USA, it was the first marriage in both the families. Hence, the best had to be achieved. A new house had been bought for the new couple to start their life independently. This had to be suitably furnished and decorated. Then the shopping had to be done. A lot of shopping. Both Professor Sate and Sudha had taken long leaves to ensure that nothing went wrong. Well, nothing. Yet things went wrong. Very wrong. There was a light drizzle outside. Street did not have much movement or any traffic. Kamini got down from the car and opened the gate. As she crossed the compound, she wondered why the house was dark when there was light outside. And why was it so quiet? Where was everybody? She opened the lock and entered the small hall. No sound. Intrigued, she entered the front room. She felt the presence of a human figure seated on the sofa chair near the window, with bluish moonlight falling on it. She gasped slightly and switched on the light. As she turned around, she came face to face with her parents seated on separate sofa chairs. She felt jolted as well as relieved. But why were they looking so somber, so sad? "Why are you sitting in the dark, Daddy? What happened?" He did not answer, just stared at her with pain in his eyes and gloom on his face. She waited. No answer. She turned to her mother, whose face betrayed anger. "Mummy, what else is there for us now except darkness?" Her mother was bitter. "What do you mean?" Kamini was puzzled. "Who is R.D.?" Her father shot this time. "Who is R.D.? What do you mean, who is R.D.? Do you have any idea who R.D. is?" Sudha asked curtly. "Yes, I have. That he is a leading businessman, an industrialist, a tycoon. That he is a philanthropist, a very generous man, a man of the people." A touch of sarcasm crept into her tone. "Who says that?" asked Professor Sate, sounding offended. "You said that, Dad. You have always boasted about it." "To whom?" "To your friends, relatives, colleagues, to the whole world actually, and not once, but repeatedly. You have been very proud about it." She sounded confrontationist. There was silence. None spoke for quite some time. Then her mother broke the uncomfortable silence in a conciliatory tone. "Well, he's not what he professes to be. He is a Don, a much feared underworld Don." She cut her. "You know that?" asked a very shocked Professor Sate. "Yes, of course I know that." "Who told you?" Professor Sate was flabbergasted. "He told me." "He who?" It was Sudha's turn to go completely off her rockers. R.D. Sahib himself. Her parents were speechless and they gawked at her, dumbfounded, for a seemingly endless length of time, before Professor Sate asked, sounding betrayed, "You knew all the time?" "No, I didn't know all the time." "When did you learn about it?" He was suspicious. a few days before the formal engagement ceremony. You asked him? No, he told me on his own. On his own? Just like that? Not just like that. He especially called me over to tell me about it. Why? He sounded angry and restless. Because he felt guilty. He didn't want to cheat me. She retaliated in a pained voice. Didn't want to cheat you? Then why did he hook you through his son? Typical of the criminal, the murderer. Sudha was outraged. Will you let me handle this? Professor Sate snapped at his wife. Nobody spoke for a long time. Tension hung heavy in the atmosphere. Professor Sate beckoned her to sit. Sit down, come on. She did so. He seemed to mull over the matter before he spoke calmly, softly. We have to return the ring, Pete. What? What are you saying, Daddy? You can't get married to Harsh. There was firmness in his voice. Daddy, we are already engaged. Everybody witnessed it. Your friends, your relatives, my friends, the whole world. She argued. We can't let you marry a criminal. Sudha almost screamed. Mummy, Harsh is not a criminal. He is a student. He has already enrolled in London for training to be an engineer. She retaliated. What about his father? He is his son. Sudha argued angrily. Mummy, R.D. Sahib also wants to change. He wants to get out of that world. I know he does. Didn't you tell me those stories of Valmiki? Right? He also was a criminal, a murderer. Didn't he change? That is all fiction. Religious mumbo-jumbo. That doesn't apply in real life. We live in the real world. In a society of real people, real issues. Sudha retaliated more angrily. Kamini turned to her father and dared him. And what about those business tycoons the world over you used to tell me about, Dad? Many of whom began as pirates and petty criminals and who changed, became philanthropists, established NGOs, educational institutions, hospitals. Those are the things for books, magazines, interviews, on TV and radio. Come down to earth, Kammo. You damn well know what problem we will have to face and what havoc it will create. I thought you were an intelligent girl. Stop arguing for God's sake. Professor Sate lashed at her. Kamini was stunned. Tears flashed in her eyes, and she said in a weak and pained voice, You are turning around everything you ever taught me, Dad. Ma, is that what the real world is all about? Stop it, Kammo, and listen to me. This marriage is off. We won't have it. And it's final, said her mother uncompromisingly. I thought it is my marriage we were talking about. Kamini gave back softly, but sarcastically. Professor Sate sprung up from his seat and said in a reprimanding tone, I can't go on with this argument anymore. I'm going to my room. And he stormed out. I'm coming also, Sudha said curtly, and without even looking at Kamini, she also walked out of the room. Kamini felt humiliated like a condemned criminal and extremely frustrated with her parents' twisted logic and totally rigid attitude. She wanted to explode and scream her guts out. In anger, she threw her handbag on the wall and charged to the door. She dashed out, slamming the door shut after her. It was still drizzling outside. Harsh's car, which had dropped her earlier, had already gone. Propelled by her anger, she started walking briskly in one direction, with no aim or destination in mind. She walked and walked. Their house being located in the secluded university area, the street was almost deserted at this hour, with only an occasional vehicle or two passing by, or a lone pedestrian crossing the pavement. Indifferent to the drizzle, which had since increased, she continued to walk, driven by the whirlwind in her mind, till she came to the periphery of a park. Its gates were locked, being late in the night. But there were a couple of empty benches on the broad, circuitous pavement outside. She sat down on one of the benches, indifferent to the drizzle which continued to wet her. Gradually her anger began to subside, and she felt lonely. She also realized that she was drenched and cold. Her body shivered a few times. She felt like talking to somebody. She thought of Harsh, but knew she couldn't speak to him about what had happened. She decided to talk to Rajni, but realized that her cell, the new gadget Harsh had gifted her, had been left in the bag which she had flung on the wall of the sitting room. With the cold beginning to bite her and her shivers increasing, she panicked and felt even lonelier. She decided to return home to at least get her handbag back. She walked slowly, shivering, tired out, her feet aching. The drizzle had thinned out but not stopped. She could see the light in her parents' room, which faced the street. The rest of the house was still wrapped in darkness. As she entered the gate, which was still open, she panicked again, realizing she had left her keys in her handbag. She didn't want to ring the bell or knock on the door, so she just stood at her place at the end of the paved pathway leading to the front door, shivering and pondering what to do. Then she noticed the door open slowly. A figure clad in darker clothes stood in the doorway. It was Jamuna. Like a cat, she sprung upon her noiselessly and grabbed both her hands. "How cold your hands have become," Jamuna whispered in a shocked voice as she looked into Kamini's eyes. Kamini was moved, seeing tears flash in Jamuna's eyes as she pulled her inside without letting go of her hands. "My bag," Kamini whispered, tried to put up a mild resistance. "I'll bring everything. First you get into your room," Jamuna whispered back urgently while continuing to lead her to her room upstairs. Inside the room, Jamuna's tears flowed silently as she briskly helped Kamini to get out of her wet clothes and dry her body and hair with a fresh towel. She then helped her into her nightdress and wrapped 2 blankets around her. Still trying to struggle with her tears, she told Kamini firmly, "I'm bringing hot milk for you. You drink that and then go to sleep. You are very cold and will catch fever otherwise. Yes, yes, I'm bringing your handbag too." And she was gone. Not a question asked, nothing explained. Simply a bond reaffirmed. Kamini pulled her feet up and leaned against the bed rest. Tears flashed in her eyes too, along with a feeble smile. Jamuna brought the hot milk and made sure Kamini drank it all in her presence. Through the snatches of conversation with Jamuna as she had the milk, Kamini learnt that Jamuna had also become the target of severe wrath from her parents, who suspected that, being her close confidant, she must have known all along whatever transpired between their daughter and the Jadhavs. She also learnt that her parents had gone out in their car looking for her after she had walked out in a huff. A sad smile appeared on her face, but she said nothing. After Jamna tucked her in the bed and left, she thought of calling Rajni. But just as she switched on her cell, she heard a car entering the compound. Though sure who it could be, she still quickly got out of the bed and went to the window and sneaked a look at the driveway below. She saw the sad and tired figures of her parents get out of the car and walk to the front door. In a couple of minutes, she heard faint sounds of them talking to Jamuna just outside her door. She froze in her place, wondering if they would enter her room, as the door was not locked from inside, Jamuna having pulled it shut on her leaving. In a couple of seconds, their voices trailed off. Apparently, they had moved to their room and decided to let her have a good sleep. Something came over her, and she removed every stitch of the clothing from her body. Totally naked, she went to a wall and stood with her back pinned to it like a sad mural. In a few moments, she changed her posture to that of a ballet dancer. In a tragedy play, though standing quite still, with her back to the wall and her face even sadder, the drizzle outside had stopped, and faint bluish moonlight streamed inside, rendering her appearance mysterious like a mural in an ancient temple. She tried another posture and then another, all like murals engraved in the wall, with even tears beginning to shimmer in her eyes. Soon she was tired. She moved to the bed, resignedly slipped under the blankets, and slowly curled up unto herself as she felt cold again. She was out of her bearings as she scrambled for the source of the sound. It was her cell phone, which had been ringing while she was in deep sleep. When she answered it, she found her voice very hoarse and her throat pained. The caller perhaps didn't understand her, so she tried again. "Hello?" she squeaked. "Kamini? What has happened to your voice?" It was Rajni. She cleared her throat and spoke again, her voice a little clearer this time. "I was sleeping, yours. Sorry," she said, her voice still croaked. "You know what time is it? It's past 11 already." Rajni was dramatic. "Oh God, really?" She was scandalized and added, "I was very late last night. But 11? That's unforgivable. Anyway, congrats." "For what?" "Don't you know?" "Don't I know what?" Kamini was puzzled. "Uncle has been nominated for the UN. For that, stupid." "Uncle? You mean my dad?" "Yes, I mean your dad." "Why? Didn't he tell you?" "No, I was late last night. Went straight to bed. And then, as you know, I got up late. Had a bit of a fever." She tried to put up a cover. "Look, let me not keep you. I have to rush somewhere. You get ready and call me later." "Fine, I will. Bye." She hung up. Kamini sat in the bed for a few minutes, thinking over the incidents of the previous night and then the news, which she had just received. She wondered as to why something which should ordinarily be highly gratifying was not boosting her spirits. Then, realizing the state she was in, she panicked and hurriedly pulled out of the bed and rushed into the washroom. Later on, her mother joined her at the table as she was having her late breakfast. Her father had already gone to the university. Kamini cringed a bit as Sudha straightaway went for her forehead, feeling it by her hand, then the inside of her neck, and then the pulse before saying, I don't think you have got fever now. How do you feel though? I feel fine. I'm okay, she said reservedly. You didn't have any dinner last night, remarked Sudha, pouring some tea for herself. I had milk, hot milk, she replied, taking a bite of her toast. They both did not speak for some time. Tension hung in the air. Kamini broke the silence. I believe Dad has been nominated for the UN. Well, that's what we wanted to tell you last night. But her mother's face beamed as she said this. She was cut short by Kamini. Let's forget about what happened last night. Congrats. It calls for a celebration. Yes, Sudha said with a sigh before remarking again. But there are problems already. What problems? That's what your dad wanted to tell you, but I don't understand what problems. Kamini was suspicious. It's complicated. Why don't you tell me? The IB people visited him yesterday. Sudha sounded mysterious. IB? Kamini was confused. Yes, IB. The Intelligence Bureau. The Secret Service Agency of the central government. What have they got to do with this? Sudha had a look of surprise as she stared at Kamini before remarking with a slight smirk. You don't get it, do you? Kamini didn't appreciate the hint of sarcasm in her mother's voice. She responded slightly challengingly. No, I don't. Explain to me. They have dossiers on everybody. Everybody important. So, they have one on RD too. Kamini looked at her mother blankly at first. It took some time before the news sank in. Oh, that's where it comes from. We are going to tell you about it yesterday, but what are you going to do about it? Depends. Depends on what you are going to do about it. Kamini did not say anything for quite some time. Then suddenly she asked, as if on an impulse, Tell me, Mummy, Dad never had any idea at all about RD's antecedents, is it? Well, maybe vaguely, a little bit. But then people are always talking things about people. Besides, how did it matter? Your father was already a senior professor in the university, well respected in the profession, widely recognized as a noted author too. It wasn't as if he was seeking a job or just beginning his career, you see. Sudha went on off-guardedly. And now it matters, right? Kamini pinned her abruptly. Sudha was thrown off balance and realizing what she had got into. She asked, What do you mean? He is being nominated for a highly prestigious and hugely rewarding appointment at the UN. It can all be jeopardized with even a slightly wrong reference. Isn't that so? Sudha's face turned red. She was on the same wavelength with her daughter, but the irony was that the wave didn't suit her. She said bitterly, Why are you being so judgmental? We are your parents, not your enemies. Or are we? Why are you getting so defensive? Kamini dared her. Come on, stop being so superior. Sudha was curt. I'm not being superior, Mummy. I'm simply hurt with the duplicity of it all. She was hurting. Duplicity? How dare you call it duplicity? You are being selfish. Sudha was furious. Kamini was stunned. Tears flashed in her eyes as she protested. You call me selfish, Mummy? How can you call me selfish when it was you and Daddy who were always pushing me to meet her more, inviting him home, urging me to go out with him. You are the ones who are going gaga over Artie. It's Daddy and you who took the initiative of going to his place and putting the pan in his mouth to seal the proposal. Yes, and now also, we are going to call it off in our own way for everybody's good. Of course, we are going to be careful. We don't want to annoy him either. You are going to do what we want you to do. You are our daughter, she snapped. Kamini was totally speechless at the way her mother lashed at her. She stared at her disbelievingly for a few moments, then simply got up and left the table to go to her room, disregarding her mother who was beckoning her. Where are you going? Come back, come on. I'm talking to you. She was furious as she slammed the door shut behind her. Then she walked to the window and opened it angrily. She drew the air in large sweeps as if she was suffocating. Gradually, she calmed and leaned by the frame of the window, feeling weak and lonely. Is this what growing up and being mature is all about? Becoming less honest and more calculative every successive day? She wondered. Tears flashed in her eyes, and she turned around. Resting by the sill, she took a long look at the large space of her room, as though she did not recognize it anymore. Slowly, she straightened, and her eyes shone with decisiveness as she picked up her cell. Hi, Rajni acknowledged her cheerfully, and then the words seemed to dance on her lips. Happy, 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 happy. Happy as hell, that's what I am. You don't sound happy. Where are you? I'm getting into an auto. I should be home in 10 minutes. I'm coming over. Oh, you are? Great, come. Kamini charged in as soon as Rajni opened the door, making straight to the little kitchenette. She poured herself some water and gulped it quickly. She took long breaths twice or thrice to soothe her nerves and then turned to face Rajni, who had stopped in the doorway itself, noticing her state. I'm not going back, she announced. Shall we have some tea? Rajni said warmly as she moved in. She stepped into her way to stop her. Can I stay? You tell me first, she demanded. Come on, yaar. You have stayed here before. You know I have an empty bed. My bed is small, but I guess it's pretty good for the two of us. Now shall we have the tea? Rajni said invitingly. Who will make it? You or I? Kamini's playfulness had returned. Today I will. Tomorrow it will be your turn. They burst into laughter. End of part 4, chapter 5.